evening. It's happy hour. It's time for Chapter 5 of Sex and the City by Candace Bushnell. Get your cocktails ready. Tonight I'm having one of my favorites, which is a skinny girl margarita that Bethany Frankel, she knows what she's doing. Tasty. All right. I'm bringing back the green screen too. Do you like my New York backdrop? All right. Let's get started. Now, don't forget to check out the merch store. The store link is in the description, and you can pick up your wine coolers to have happy hour with me that say I survived and just like that with YouTube group therapy. And we're all going to need those for season 2. Are you ready? I'm so glad you guys are here. Let's get into chapter 5. Chapter 5, meet the guys who bed models. Oh, this is the Modelizers. Do you guys remember this episode? Carrie was like talking to the guys who only date models. And wasn't Sam trying to get videotaped by one of them? That freak that was like videotaping every model that he slept with? What a sicko. All right. There was just the slightest stir as Gregory Roke, the conspiracy filmmaker, slipped into Bowery Bar on a recent Friday night. The auteur of such controversial films as GRF, Gerald Rudolph Ford, and The Monkees, Mr. Roke was wearing a ratty, tatty tweed jacket and keeping his head down. Surrounding him was a swarm of 6 young women, new models with a well-known modeling agency. All of the girls were under 21. 2 were as young as 16. Oh my. What? No. No, no, no. No. Let me just break in here. I don't know whose morality this is, but 16-year-olds do not belong in bars with modelizers. Oh, hell no. This is one of the reasons why I do not like the modeling career path for girls, because they get them so young and then they put them in situations where it is not appropriate for a 16-year-old to be. Good God. So I just want to put that out there. 16-year-olds should not be doing this. All of the girls were under 21. 2 were as young as 16. Dear God. Where are their parents? And most of them had never seen Mr. Roke's films and frankly couldn't have cared less. Functioning like 2 small tugboats and keeping the swarm moving and intact were the Modelizers, Jack and Ben, 2 self-employed investors in their early 30s, men of nondescript features, save for the buck teeth of one and the stylish, spiky haircut of the other. At first glance, it looked like a merry group. The girls were smiling. Mr. Roke sat in a banquet, flanked by his beauties, while the 2 young men sat in the aisle chairs, as if to ward off any unwelcome intruders who might try to talk to Mr. Roke, or even worse, steal one of the girls. Mr. Roke would lean toward one girl or another girl, engaging in snippets of conversation. The young men were lively, but it wasn't quite as charming as it appeared. For one thing, if you looked closely at the girls, you could see the boredom pulling down their features like old age. They had nothing to say to Mr. Roke, and even less to say to each other. But everyone at the table had a job to do, and they were doing it. So the group sat and sat, looking glamorous, and after a while they got in Mr. Roke's limousine and went to the tunnel, where Mr. Roke danced dispiritedly with one of the girls, and then realized he was bored up to his eye teeth and went home alone. Oh, Lord. The girls stayed for a while and took drugs. Remember, some of them are 16. Holy crap, where are their parents? And the girls stayed for a while and took drugs, and then Jack, who had the spiky haircut, grabbed one of the girls and said, "You stupid slut," and she went home with him, and he gave her more drugs, and she gave him a blowjob. Yikes. Okay, so far, this is just depressing the shit out of me. How about you? Are you feeling depressed yet? This is not a scene that I would want to be part of at all, or any one of my daughters to be part of. Cripes. That sort of scenario is acted out just about every night in New York in restaurants and clubs. Wonder if Hunter Biden was at any of these parties. I'm sorry. Moving on. There, one invariably finds the beautiful young models who flock to New York like birds, and their attendants, men like Jack and Ben, who practically make a profession of wining and dining them, and with varying degrees of success seducing them. Meet the modelizers. Can't speak. Modelizers are a particular breed. They're a step beyond womanizers who will sleep with just about anything in a skirt. Modelizers are obsessed not with women but with models. They love them for their beauty and hate them for everything else. Their stupidity, their flakiness, their lack of values, their baggage, says Jack. Modelizers inhabit a sort of parallel universe with its own planets. Nobu, Bowery Bar, Tabak, Flowers, Tunnel, Expo, Metropolis. And satellites, the various apartments, many near Union Square, and that and the big modeling agencies, many near Union Square that the big modeling agencies rent for the models. And goddesses, Linda, Naomi, Christy, Elle, and Bridget. Welcome to their world. It's not pretty. Not any man can become a modelizer. To get models, you have to be rich, really good looking, and or in the arts. Oh, okay, and also or tall. Tall men have a much better chance with models than most men because models are so tall that they rarely find men who are taller than them. So this was one of my stories of being a good wing woman. My cousin Andrew is very tall and he's like 6'4" or something, 6'5". So he's unusually tall, above average tall. And one year when I was working at WLS, which is a huge radio station in Chicago, we used to get tickets to everything, and the employees were allowed to go to a bunch of stuff. So there was a fashion show that happened on State Street at the Marshall Fields. It's no longer there. God, it was a beautiful store, just gorgeous. And they had done the entire like an entire floor for a party, for an after party for this fashion show. And I had the tickets to the after party. So I don't remember what my husband was doing that night, but he wasn't available. So I called my cousin and I was like, "Why don't you come with me? This is going to be really fun. It's a formal event." I had 2 tickets. And so we got all dressed up. I was wearing like a silver ball gown. It was so fun. It was a black tie event. He was all dressed up in a suit and he's real tall and good looking. And we were very young. We were in our 20s at the time. So all the models were at the party, right? And there were several different dance floors, several different bars. And so I would go out and meet these girls on the dance floor and we're having a great time and then I would introduce them to my very tall handsome cousin. He walked out of there that night. He had a girl on each arm. We were taking pictures. It was incredible. They were all over him. All the men were so jealous of him because they all wanted his attention because he was so tall. And all the other men were really short. They were all shorter than the girls. So trust me, if you're tall, you have a better chance with models as well. He had a good time that night. It was fun. There were great pictures. I should find the pictures of us. I have pictures. I should put some in here. I will. I'll put some pictures of that night in here because it was so fun. All right. Uh, where was I? To get models, you have to be rich, really good looking, and or in the arts, says Barkley. He's an up and coming artist, and he has a face like a Botticelli angel, framed by a blonde page boy haircut. He's sitting in his junior loft in Soho, which is paid for by his parents, as are all the rest of his expenses. It must be nice. His father being a coat hanger magnate in Minneapolis. What's a coat hanger magnate? The guy made a fortune in coat hangers? Wow, I didn't know there was a fortune in coat hangers. That's good for Barkley because being a modelizer isn't cheap. There are drinks at clubs, dinners, cab expenses from one club to another, and drugs, mostly marijuana, but occasionally heroin and cocaine. It also takes time, lots of time. Barkley's parents think he's painting, but he's too busy spending his days organizing his nights with models. Frankly, I'm kind of confused about this whole model thing, Barkley says. He's pacing around his loft in leather jeans, shirtless. His hair is just washed and his chest has something like 3 hairs on it. Models love him. They think he's hot and nice. You've got to treat them just like regular girls, he says. Then he lights up a cigarette and says, you've got to be able to roll into a place and go right up to the hottest girl there. Otherwise, you're finished. It's like being around dogs. You've got to show no fear. I think that comes straight from the episode in Sex and the City called Modelizers. That dialogue sounds familiar to me. The phone rings. Hannah. She's doing a shoot in Amsterdam. Barkley puts her on the phone. She's lonely and she's stoned. I miss you, baby, she moans. Her voice is like a serpent trying to crawl out of its skin. If you were right here, right now, I'd have your self-censoring down my throat. Oh my goodness. I love that so much, baby. See, Barkley says. He talks to her, raking his fingers through his hair. He lights up a joint. I'm smoking with you now, baby. There are 2 kinds of modelizers, those who are closing the deal and those who aren't, says Coert Felsky, the author of Shallow Man, a novel about a man who chases models. Leading the pack are the supermodelizers, men who are seen with the likes of Elle Macpherson, Bridget Hall, Naomi Campbell. There are guys like this any place models congregate. Paris, Milan, and Rome, says Mr. Felsky. These guys have a status in the world of modeling. They can pick off models like clay pigeons. They burn them and churn them. But not all modelizers are high profile. In Manhattan, a necessary stopping off point for young new models, just being rich can be enough. Take George and his partner Charlie. On any given night of the week, George and Charlie are taking a group of models, sometimes up to 12, out to dinner. George and Charlie could be Middle European or even Middle Eastern, but in truth, they're from New Jersey. They're in the import-export business, and though neither is 30 yet, they're each worth a few million. Charlie never gets laid, says George, laughing, spinning around in his leather swivel chair behind a large mahogany desk in his office. There are oriental carpets on the floor and real art on the walls. George says he doesn't care about getting laid. It's a sport, he says. For these guys, the girls are a trophy extension, confirms Mr. Felsky. Maybe they feel unattractive or are blindly ambitious. Last year, George got a 19-year-old model pregnant. He knew her for 5 weeks. Now they've got a 9-month-old son. He never sees her anymore. Here's what she wants. $4,500 a month in child support, a $500,000 life insurance policy, a $50,000 college fund. I think that's a little excessive, don't you? George asks. When he smiles, the tops of his teeth are gray. Gross. No, it's not excessive. That's not excessive at all for a super wealthy guy to pay in child support and college tuition and a life insurance. No, it's not much at all. Pay for your kids, folks. Pay for your kids. Or don't make them. Wilhelmina girls. So how does a guy get into George's position? The girls travel in packs, explains Barkley. It's a very closed group. The models hang out in posses and live in groups in model apartments. They don't feel safe unless they go out together. It's intimidating to a guy. On the flip side, it works to your advantage because if there are 20 models in a place, the one you want is not going to be the most beautiful. You have more of a chance. If there's just one, she's the most beautiful and she can work it. When you go up to one in a group of 4 or 5, it makes that girl feel like she's better than the other girls. The trick is meeting one girl. The best way is through a mutual friend. Once a guy has access, once you get validated by one of the girls, says Mr. Felsky, then the guy gets beyond being an ordinary Joe. 3 years ago, George was at a club where he ran into a girl he knew from high school who was with a booker with an agency. He met some models. He had drugs. Eventually, they all went back to the model's apartment. He had enough to keep them all going until 7 in the morning. He fooled around with one of them. The next day, she agreed to see him again, but only if all the other girls could come, too. He took them all out to dinner. He kept going. That was the beginning of an obsession, he says. George knows all of the model apartments now, the places where, for $500 a month, a new model gets to sleep in a bunk bed in a cramped 2 or 3 bedroom apartment with 5 other girls. But he's got to keep up because the girls come and go all the time. And you have to stay close to at least one girl in the apartment. God, it's like a brothel. I mean, does this sound like a good like a good career path for your kid. I worry about pushing girls into modeling because of this very thing. I mean, they're just objects to people and it's gross. Still, there's a free flowing supply. It's easy, George says. He picks up the phone and dials a number like he's ordering Chinese. Like, this is gross. Hello, is Susan there? He asks. Susan's in Paris. Oh, he says, sounding disappointed. I'm an old friend of hers. In truth, he's known her for 2 months. And I just got back into town myself. Damn, who's this? Sabrina. Hey, Sabrina, I'm George. They chat for about 10 minutes. We're thinking about going to the Bowery Bar tonight, getting a group together. Do you want to come? Yeah, sure, why not? Sabrina says. You can practically hear her thumb pop out of her mouth. Terrifying. And who else is there with you? George asks. Do you think they might want to come too? George hangs up the phone. It's actually better if there are more girls than guys when you go out, he says. If there are more girls, they get competitive with each other. They get quiet. Mm. If a girl is seeing a guy and she lets the other girls know, it can be a mistake. She thinks the girls she's living with are her friends, but they're not. They're girls she just met who happen to be in the same situation. Girls try to steal guys all the time. There are lots of Bambis out there, says Mr. Felsky. George says he has a system. There's a hierarchy of sexual availability in the model apartments, he says. Wilhelmina girls are the easiest. Willie tends to get girls who grew up in mobile homes or the East End of London. Elite, they have 2 apartments, one uptown on 86th Street and one downtown on 16th. They keep the nice girls in the uptown apartment. The girls in the downtown apartment are friendlier. Oh my God, it is just like a whorehouse. I mean, it's like, how is this not human trafficking? I wonder if Epstein was visiting these apartments. I wonder if he was one of these guys like George. That's a really good question. I wonder if she knew Epstein. I bet she did. I bet she did. And how sick is this? This is pretty disturbing. But what's interesting is that Jeffrey Epstein's story validates a lot of this, right? Of the girls being too young and preying on the girls that come to New York, looking to break into something, show business, modeling, whatever. Parents, don't send your girls to do this. Just don't. And if you're going to, if you're determined, you better go with them. You better supervise. Oh man, I would be the worst stage mama. I would be right there. Although I would never encourage my children to do any kind of show business. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. We're going to live quiet lives of purpose and safety. Safety first. I don't trust any of these people. Do you? I mean, listen to this. And these are true stories. These are people she knew talking about actually what they were doing to these girls, trading them like baseball cards. This is me as a mother. This is making me angry. One of my Ben, didn't you tell me I was going to like this chapter? I'm getting angry. Am I getting red in the face yet? Because I'm getting angry. I'm getting upset. A lot of these girls lived. Oh wait, I missed something. Okay, so the downtown apartment girls are friendlier. Girls who live with Eileen Ford are untouchable. One reason is that Eileen's maid hangs up on you if you call. My best friend was offered a deal with Ford when she was 18 and she was just about to go off to college, and she chose college, and I was so proud of her because she was so beautiful. And I mean, when Ford offers you a contract, they wanted her to do runway modeling in Milan. And she chose college. Good for her. She's the one who married a multimillionaire, by the way. So she did well for herself, and she got her college degree, and she's super smart, and she runs a poetry magazine. So she's much better off than she would be if she were still doing modeling. A lot of these girls live between 28th Street and Union Square. There's Zeckendorf Towers on 15th and a place on 22nd and Park Avenue South. The older models who work a lot tend to live on the east side. A Modelizer glossary. Thing equals a model. Civilian equals women who are not models. We talk about it all the time, how hard it is to go back to civilians, says George. You never meet them or make an attempt to meet them. It's easier to get a model into bed than it is to get a civilian with a career to put out, says Sandy. Sandy's an actor with brilliant green eyes. Civilians, they want stuff from guys. Things dissected. Thursday night at Barolo. Mark Baker, the restaurateur and promoter, is throwing one of his special parties. Here's how it works. The promoters have a relationship with the agencies. The agencies know that the promoters are safe, i.e., they're going to take care of their girls, entertain them. In turn, the promoters need the modelizers to take the girls out. The promoters don't always have the money to take the girls out to dinner. The modelizers do. Someone's got to feed them. The modelizer meets someone like Mr. Roke. Mr. Roke wants girls. The modelizers want girls, and they also want to hang out with Mr. Roke. Everyone is happy. Outside on this, how is this not like prostitution, though? Like, it's just like a high-end escort service, isn't it? How did these modeling agencies get away with it? And I wonder how many of them had Epstein on their call number for a guy who would take out girls and show them a good time. Like, I'm really curious right now. I think I've uncovered something. My journalist brain will not stop running to Jeffrey Epstein as I'm reading this. Like, I bet they did. Boy, would I like to talk to somebody at Wilhelmina who was there back in the 80s. Cripes. Outside on this Thursday night, there's pandemonium on the sidewalk. People pushing, trying to get the attention of a tall, mean looking guy who could be part Oriental, part Italian. Inside, the place is jammed. Everyone is dancing. Everyone is tall and beautiful. You talk to a girl with a fake European accent. Oh, it's Anna Delvey. Anna Delvey. She's just the weirdest accent. I can't do it. Jen from Real Housewives Recaps does the most hilarious accent for Anna Delvey. You have to hear it. It's so good. Then a girl from Tennessee who just returned from a trip back home. I was wearing bell bottoms and platform shoes, and my old boyfriend said, Carol Ann, what the hell are you wearing? And I said, get with it, honey. This is New York. Jack slides by and starts talking. Even if they're dumb, models are very manipulative. You can split them into 3 types. 1, the new girl in town. They're usually really young, 16, 17. They go out a lot. They might not work that much. They want something to do. They need to meet people, like photographers. 2, the girls who work a lot. They're a little older, 21 and up. They've been in the business for 5 years. They never go out. They travel a lot, and you almost never see them. And 3, the supermodels. They're looking for a big time guy who can do something for them. They're all obsessed with money, maybe because their careers are insecure. They won't even look at a guy who has less than 20 or 30 mil. Plus, they have the big girl complex. They won't hang out with any girl who's not a top model, and they ignore other models or bitch about them. You go down to the bathroom with Jack and hang out in the men's room. By the time they get to be 21, these girls have tons of baggage, says Jack. They have a history, children, guys they've slept with, guys you don't like. Most of them come from broken homes or fucked up backgrounds. They're beautiful, but in the end, they don't do anything for you. They're young, they're uneducated, they have no values, you know? Well, how could they? They've been raised in a whorehouse, basically. Like, how? How could they have values when they're being traded like property instead of cared for and nurtured and loved and protected? How would you expect people like that to survive? Like, they don't. They're damaged. And it's not their fault. It's just making me mad. My mama bear is coming out. I'm very angry for these women. So much usury, is that the right word? I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I mean, they're using these girls like objects, and it's not okay. I'm glad she wrote about this. I hope they were really embarrassed when this came out in the paper. I mean, this was like a really subversive way to write about this bad behavior that was going on. I mean, Candace is not making it sound good. Or is any of this sounding like these are good people to you? Frankly, I think that the HBO version gave them a pass, and they made it seem a lot more fun than this. This is much more predatory and reminding me of Epstein Island and the freaking. I'm proud of Candace for writing this in the newspaper back then. They deserve to be outed like this. Uh, I prefer the older ones. You have to find one without baggage, and I'm on the search. Do these guys even realize they're the ones creating the baggage? Good Lord. Get one, get them all. The trick is to get one big girl, like a Hunter Reno or a Jana Rhodes, says George. These are girls who have done covers in Europe. If you get one, you can get them all. At a nightclub, you pay attention to the older girls. They always want to go home early because they have to get up and work. You walk them out to a cab, being a gentleman, and then you go back in and attack the young ones. These girls just want to be comfortable, said Mr. Felsky. They're so young. They're just finding their way in a grown-up world. They're not fully developed, and they meet these guys who know all the tricks. How hard can it be? God, what a jerk. He knows what he's doing. They know what they're doing. They're not even fully developed. He just said so. They know that these girls are easily taken advantage of, and they just do it anyway. Back in the loft, Barkley opens a bottle of Coke and sits on a stool in the middle of the room. You think, who's prettier than a model? But they're not so smart. They're flaky and fucked up, and a lot looser than you think. It's way easier to screw a model than a regular girl. That's what they do all the time. It's the way regular people are when they're on vacation. They're away, so they do things they wouldn't normally do. But these girls are away all the time because they travel from place to place. So that's what they're like all the time. Barkley takes a sip from his Coke and scratches his stomach. It's 3 in the afternoon, and he just woke up an hour ago. These girls are nomads, he says. They have a guy in every city. They call me when they're in New York, and I always imagine that they call someone else when they're in Paris or Rome or Milan. We pretend that we're going out when they're in town. We hold hands and we see each other every day. A lot of girls want that, but then they're gone. Barkley yawns. I don't know. There are so many beautiful girls around that after a while you start looking for someone who can make you laugh. That's the best thing anybody's said yet in this chapter. It's amazing sometimes that you'll do what you'll do to be with one of these girls, George says. I went to church with one girl and her daughter. I've started hanging out with the older girls almost exclusively. I've got to retire soon. They keep me from getting work done. They make me fuck up my life. George shrugged and glanced out the window of his 34th floor office at the view of Midtown Manhattan. Look at me, he says. I'm an old man at 29. That's the end of chapter 5, the Modelizers. I gotta say, my takeaway is I'm really proud of Candace Bushnell for writing about that the way she did, because I don't think that would have, it certainly didn't come off to me as being something to admire, the way that those guys were living and behaving. And I feel like Sex and the City could have gone way deeper into that to show us that dark side. I don't think Candace was making that out to be fun or funny. God, now that I think about it, if I had been her and I watched the Sex and the City episode about it, I would have been pissed. Because there was it was just like, oh, look at these guys, this is what they do, and aren't they jerks because they'll only date models, but without focusing on how bad it was for the models and how those girls were just being used and trafficked around New York by all these wealthy men. They're literally trafficking them back and forth between each other, and the modeling companies were in on it. Frankly, Candace, you could have blown the lid off the Epstein scandal back then if anybody was paying attention. They should have been talking to your sources. Wow. I'm shocked by this. I guess I'm not really shocked. I mean, I saw the Epstein documentary, so why would I be shocked? All right, well, that's that for this episode of our book club. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to check out the merch store. We're going to be watching season 2, and I'm going to be recapping every single episode. You can count on that. And again, thank you so much for being here with me and for doing this. And don't forget to set your alarm for book club next week. We will be reading chapter 6, which is entitled New York's Last Seduction, Loving Mr. Big. I'm so excited to hear Candace Bushnell's version of Mr. Big, right? It's going to be so good. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. And I hope you had a wonderful happy hour with me. And I'll see you again soon. Cheers.